Advanced warning, this is going to be one of the heaviest exercises in the entire course, and I'm not going to filter the emotional heaviness for the sake of comfort, because that would destroy the point. We're going to be looking at traumatic baggage and the hate bonds which are lingering in your consciousness and are holding you back from the next level of healing, the next level of expansion, but ultimately those very, very, very painful places that we don't really want to address. We're going to ultimately be looking at a series of questions which will guide you along that healing arc from understanding to acceptance and ultimately towards forgiveness. But I need to make it clear from the very beginning, there is no exercise, there is no book, there isn't even a course on the internet or an entire library of books which is going to help you forgive someone who you have a hate bond with. It's not something which happens immediately when the trauma was compounded, usually at the very least over multiple months, and often in the case of parental figures, former romantic partners, business colleagues who betrayed us, or friends that turned sour. Those are multiple year stories, they're multiple year relationships, and you are not going to be able to forgive someone with any exercise. It usually takes years. My name? Bond. Hate bond. And I like my shadow integrated, not stirred. What an awful cutaway. I'm making a joke because what you're about to witness is a very, very heavy guided exercise from my shadow work library course. Advanced warning, behind closed doors I have zero censorship, and I've had to actively censor some of the words in this video so I can even put it up on YouTube. In my course, there's none of this nonsense language policing, but I do want to share some of the experience with you. This is from Module 3, where we're looking at the collective unconscious in the form of all of the worst things that humans have ever done. And we're talking war and I can't even say the words. I wanted to say the word, I can't say the words. The worst things that human beings do. I can't even say it, but I do say it over in the course, and I hope that this gives you a sneak preview of what it's like when we go to true depth without cutting out our own tongue and pretending that dark human topics should be continually repressed into the shadow realm. Apparently you can put all kinds of social media content of people wearing nothing on the internet, and that's allowed, but not healing topics related to shadow integration. But I hope that this video stays on the internet, and if it doesn't stay on the internet for long, well, at least you got to see it before it was taken down. And one final invitation, if you like what you see here, click the link in the description, watch the whole playlist where I'm celebrating the launch of the course, and consider joining me on the inside for a true shadow work journey with a structured 36-book curriculum. After reading over 600 books, these are my top 36. It's a great place to be, but I hope you enjoy the video in the meantime, and remember that the name is indeed Bond. Hate bond. It's an awful joke. Enjoy the heavy video. I have yet to see in private one-to-one work, and this is maybe confronting, and I hope it doesn't take away your hope, because I'm going to reinstall some hope at the end of this. I have never seen someone heal, genuinely heal, and fully forgive a parent who abused them or hit them or sexually assaulted them, a partner who hit them, shouted at them, emotionally betrayed them, or even raped them, or any kind of friend who massively betrayed, stole a large amount of money, significantly undermined someone's trust. I've never seen someone heal that kind of wounding within a single year. It takes multiple years of moving from understanding to acceptance and forgiveness, because each layer of understanding begins the next layer of healing. You understand at the initial level, and then you accept, and then you forgive, and then a few months later there's a new level of understanding, a new level of acceptance, and a new level of forgiveness, and eventually you get towards the final stage where authentic forgiveness and inauthentic forgiveness, which is usually the bypassing around, I forgive them, but the reality is you don't forgive them because they did something horrific towards you. You don't need to rush towards that. There are people in this course who have genuinely suffered massive trauma, unspeakable things, which really I wouldn't even want to repeat, but it is things like sexual assault and significant emotional abuse. We're doing an exercise to heal some of those issues and also comparatively lighter issues like a betrayal of friendship where someone stole money from you. It's still deeply hurtful. Of course, I'm not trying to rank people's trauma. The ultimate purpose of dissolving the hate bond is to bring you back into autonomy. I want you to have genuine forgiveness so that you can release those energetic ties and all of that baggage that's tied up with certain people from your past, or maybe someone that you're still engaging with in the present. That's all a big disclaimer. If this still feels like a good exercise for you, I invite you to get your journal and make at least 20 minutes, half an hour, in fact, if it's particularly emotionally heavy material. Maybe save this video for another day where you can come back and really have multiple hours on the other end of this exercise. Just a bit of a safety check because it is very heavy material. But let's go in. Hopefully by the end of this exercise, you will move along that understanding to acceptance and then towards forgiveness without the feeling of compulsively needing to forgive someone, because often the case is that someone who suffered massive trauma has a lot of repressed anger, a lot of repressed sadness, and usually that angry, striking out stage, the you hurt me kind of stage, that can't be bypassed with a pseudo-spiritual namaste, I forgive all beings because I understand that we're all the products of trauma. Yes, that is true. There is a higher level perspective where the parent who hurt you is a result of the family of origin story where they were likewise hurt. Something traumatic happened to them, there was maybe addiction involved, and they passed that on to you. Yes, that is objectively true from a different perspective, but I don't want you to lose your subjective traumatic experience into some kind of narrative bypass which disvalidates your actual emotions. You can blend both together a little bit later on, but for now, we're going with the raw wounding, which is still hurting. So, a few questions to go into. It's not too complex, but it will be confronting. First things first, who have I not forgiven? Easy question. You've probably already been thinking of someone. Usually it's mum or a dad, an uncle, an auntie, a brother or a sister. It's often also former romantic partners, and it can also be old friends. And if you really want the high level perspective, it can also be yourself. Sometimes the hate bond that we have with an aspect of ourselves, we have not truly forgiven ourselves for something that we did. That is a really next level way of doing shadow work, because if you can accept, say for example, you significantly hurt someone, you did something really dreadful that you deeply regret. If you haven't forgiven that action, how can you move on with good consciousness? I don't know how you can do that in terms of specific examples. It's not the time and the place for me to work it all out, but I do want you to have that awareness that if you want to do this exercise twice, you could start with your mom or your dad or the ex-boyfriend or girlfriend and then come back around and answer the same questions. Just start the video from this point and start answering them about yourself, which is really confronting information. But let's move on. Hopefully you've got at least one hate bond tied up now. Maybe there's 3 or 4, in which case I'm glad that you're in the course and doing this exercise. Let's dissolve them. But first we need to understand, and then we move to accepting. It's a 3-part exercise. Second question for understanding. How have they hurt me? In what ways did they hurt you? In what particular manners? This is really bullet pointing trauma dumping. This is the healthy place for trauma dumping. It's not in your friend's inbox or on a random comment section on the internet or down the street with the cashier. This is a place where you dump the trauma and you unload and you release. How did they hurt you? In what ways did they f you up? Why are they an absolute prick? Why are they a piece of shit? Put it down. I'm going into the energy and I'm giving permission with that energy to be f***ed off about it. It's a frozen emotion usually for most people, especially if you were a child. If you were a child and something happened and you were this terrified little being and now you're a grown adult, to re-access that energy of what happened and I f***ing didn't deserve that and you, that kind of energy, that's appropriate for this kind of exercise. I'm playing with it, but also if you tap into it, that's where you start to go into somatic therapy, which we explore later in the course. It's going with all that emotional energy and really allowing an opportunity to express in a safe container where you don't actually hurt another person or break the law or do anything immoral. How did they hurt you? Take as long as you need. You can pause the video. If you need multiple pages, if suddenly an essay pours out of you, that's fine. If it's just a bullet point of he raped me or she stole from me, that's also fine. Doesn't need to be complex. It's your journey. It's your healing arc. Let's move on to the next question. How does this relationship or the memory of the relationship continue to hurt you today? How does it continue to hurt me today? That's an interesting question to sit with because, of course, if you're still in contact with the abuser or the person who you're hate bonded with, that adversarial symbiosis is more in your face. There's an obvious reason why it's not working out and they're continuing to do the same things. But for most people, especially if you're an adult and you've maybe had some distance from your parents or a former relationship, or of course, again, an aspect of yourself, it's not the lived reality. It's been many years since something's happened, but it still lingers as unresolved trauma in your heart. You may have flashbacks or nightmares. You might have patterns that you've noticed in your relationships with new people in your life that resemble this old mistrustfulness. This is the place to put down those answers. How does the memory of that relationship continue to put you off track with your current relationships? It's a good indication that the hate bond is still alive, in which case we've really mapped out an understanding of the kinds of individuals, the named individuals, the ways that they hurt us in the past, and how that awareness of how the past wounding is still hurting us in the present. That's the understanding stage. And then we start to move towards acceptance. The first layer of understanding towards forgiveness, moving through them. I don't know which stage you're at. You may be at this stage, you might be at this stage. It doesn't matter. Key question. Are you willing to heal this hate bond? Are you willing to forgive them? Are you willing to move on? Are you able to let go? You'd like to imagine that it's a yes. For some people, it's not a yes. And if it's not a yes for you, I'll come back to the yes. If it's not a yes, and you're like, no, I'm not. I want to get revenge. They f***ed me up. They deserve punishment. For some people, this can be a legal case. I've worked with people, I think a handful of people at this stage, unfortunately, as they're working through sexual assault charges, that they've also been involved in the court system. And that's been an interesting dynamic to work through in mentorship, where there's the outer reality and the inner reality, and usually the inner reality has to be a few stages ahead. You could be one level above in your forgiveness, but still want an in-the-world punishment to someone to go to jail because they did something horrific and unlawful. That's valid, but there may be an alternative timeline where you don't pursue that, and for someone else that might be equally valid. I'm not giving a suggestion either way. It depends on the individual. But you have to be willing to move on. You have to be willing to let it go. If something incredibly traumatic has happened and you're still in that stage, maybe in the first year of realizing a repressed memory came up, or you're aware of just how bad it was. Like, no, I'm not. No way. You're in that angry stage. You're in that genuinely rageful time to get it out into the world stage. It could be genuine action with a legal case. But for most people, this will be going deep into somatic therapy, where it's not a narrative resolution. They need to go and punch the bag. They need to get into the MMA classes. They need to go and sprint. They need to get heavy into the sport. They need to go to cathartic workshops. They need to do some somatic experiencing. Whatever the physical release might be, there's so much charge in their body. They need to scream. They need to physically release that energy before they can calm it down and be genuinely in a centered place, ready to move on. If that hasn't happened yet, it will happen. I'm going to include some elements of that in this course. Let's imagine now that it's a yes. If you are willing to move on, you're in the acceptance stage. You've crossed from understanding into acceptance. But the way to get actually towards forgiveness is the final question of today's exercise. Of course, I'm limiting the entire arc. The forgiveness question is a multi-year question. It's not one exercise. But for the sake of simplicity, to go further along that acceptance spectrum and get towards something that resembles the beginning of genuine forgiveness, you have to answer this question. What are the shadow benefits of not moving on, not letting go, or not healing this hate bond? What a confronting question. And this is something which is really difficult for me to talk about, not knowing who you are as an individual, because if I'm working with someone who I've built a relationship with over many months, I know that this particular woman was raped, this particular man had sexual assault when he was 10, this particular man had a situation where a friend stole £100,000. I know the individual and I know the severity of the trauma, in which case I can say to the man who lost the money, What are the secondary benefits of you still being caught in this hate bond of how awful it is that this man stole money from you, that your business partner stole money from you? And if he really pauses and he thinks, actually it gives me an excuse for not restarting the business. I'm only 36. Why am I giving up? I haven't done anything in my business for the last 6 months. I mean, the bankruptcy isn't great, but I can fix this. People have fixed this. Secondary benefits, the shadow benefits. It's not a rational conversation, but there's a deep emotional opening when you take that alternative perspective. And this won't work if you're not at the stage of acceptance. Again, this question feels incredibly disvalidating for a woman who's been and genuinely wants vengeance and feels so much fucking injustice, and she rightly should, because it's fucking disgusting. She's not going to be like, well, what are the secondary benefits of me holding on to this hate bond? There's a genuine reason to be angry, but if she's further down the journey, let's say it's been 5 years, and she's already in a new relationship, she's got a family, and she wants to release that wound from the past. It's no longer so emotionally charged, and she's like, well, Jordan, if I'm honest, there is a form of self-victimization which, if I really make the connections, I'm giving an example, I'm not saying this for everyone, hopefully you feel me here. If I really make the connections between the sexual difficulties I'm having in my marriage and some of the trauma from this, I have really been avoiding actually becoming intimate with my partner, and I've just been saying every time that he wants to initiate that he can't, and it's too scary, and I've been delaying this healing, this healing in particular, in this particular example that I'm making up, I've been delaying that because of the victim card and the excuse of that which happened 5 years ago. Again, individual, hypothetical case, this is something which has to arrive from your consciousness. What are the secondary shadow benefits? The genuine shadow, the not aware, rational consciousness of course you deserve to feel genuinely outraged, and there is a healing arc, but if we're moving towards forgiveness, there has to be a resolution, and for there to be a resolution, you have to also be willing to dissolve the secondary benefits of you not resolving the hate bond. Let's move it from something which is extreme into something which is maybe applicable to more people in this course. Let's imagine you have a mother or a father who were particularly aggressive and abusive with you. Maybe they slapped you around a bit, maybe they were shouting at you often, maybe they were avoidant with drugs and drink, and there was this kind of strange emotional distance that was always there. What are the secondary benefits of you continuing the story of, my dad was my mom was It's usually around the victimization story. There's something about the permission to not try, the excuse to stay in a stuck state, because if you share a conversation like this with anyone who's outside of a moment where, we're doing a course that involves trauma work, if you were to share with someone at your gym, someone at your workplace, my dad used to slap me around when I was a kid, and, he's a piece of shit. They're going to say, fuck that, he is a piece of shit, I can't believe that, that's so horrific, I'm sorry. Because that's a normal response to a dreadful situation. We're doing deep unconscious work, and if you and I were to work together over multiple months, I wouldn't start with, well, why are you playing the victim card? It's so disvalidating, that's not appropriate, but there is a stage that I've seen repeatedly when someone's willing to move beyond something, they have to acknowledge how that trauma, which is a genuine trauma at a higher level, at a later stage, can then become an excuse for not moving on. Imagine someone that got into a car accident, they lost a leg. Do they then give up on living the rest of their life? We see these very inspiring stories of men who come back from war, or people who've been involved in car accidents, and they become incredible athletes. The wound became the womb that births a new experience. We can't naively or optimistically leap towards that final outcome of utopian possibility without some genuine grieving in the middle. And this is the hard part. I can't speak to you as an individual. I'm just giving you the question. If it feels too much right now, you're probably not at the stage where you can genuinely get towards forgiveness. And in itself, that is a really valuable lesson, because you're going to avoid that narrative of pretend forgiveness of, oh yeah, I forgive, and I've been into my spiritual practice, and it's all fine, and my guru said that I need to move on, so And then you're getting nightmares for 10 years, and even if you continue this all the way into later life, the tragedy that I don't want you to experience is you're in your 60s or your 70s, your parents have died, let's say your parents were the abusers, your parents have died, and you still have that resentful, hot burning coal searing the back of your arteries and destroying you from the inside because you didn't let it go. You played that card forever, and you missed life. You just missed the opportunity to experience something different. A wound does not have to be permanent. It will leave a scar, and some of us have bigger scars than others. To get towards genuine forgiveness, we have to be willing to look at both the conscious and unconscious benefits and drawbacks of all of those stories and the identity which we build upon those stories, and that's what I'm trying to invite in this exercise. Once more, I will go through the list of questions just for a summary. Hopefully this is something which you can come back to if you're going to do the exercise with someone else and then return to it and you actually look at yourself and your own behaviors. That's what I would advise. So we'll go over the whole list once more. Who have I not forgiven? Question number 1. Question number 2, how have they hurt me? Number 3, how does this relationship or the memory of this relationship continue to hurt me? Those are the 3 understanding questions. They're all tied together. Question number 4, moving towards acceptance. Am I willing to heal this and move on? Am I willing to dissolve this hate bond? Am I willing to forgive? Crossing the threshold. Question number 5, and the most important question, the shadow question that cuts right to the core of trauma healing. What are the shadow benefits or the secondary benefits, the unconscious benefits, the benefits that I would never dare admit to anyone in my life? This is you and your journal. Be honest. I say that with compassion. I've done this work for myself. I'm not sharing it with you. I don't want to take away from your story. But please be honest. What are the benefits that you're getting from continuing this hate bond? And if you can list them, and you're willing to let go of them, you will be able to move a little bit further on that arc towards forgiveness. And I want that for you so much. Incredibly heavy exercise. I think it will be one of the heaviest in the course. Thank you for taking part with me. Take all the time that you need after doing this. Go for a walk if you need to take a break. I understand. I've been there. It's really hard work, but it's life-changing work. I'll see you in the next lesson. Obviously, we're on YouTube and not inside the Shadow Work library, but I've got my journal here because we're going to need it for the next exercise on the inner critic, followed by the entire playlist where we're going to be looking at repressed anger, toxic relationships, psychosynthesis, and an 8-part Shadow Work Q&A series. It's about 5 hours of shadow work. Click the playlist, and I'll see you in the inner critic exercise. Grab your journal.